Hi everyone, Miss Vicky here, and today I have a very special saint story time for you. We're going to be learning a little bit more about Saint Valentine in honor of Saint Valentine's Day that is coming up February 14th. So let's learn a little bit more about him. So I'll show you all the photos as we go along. And let's begin. In the ancient city of Rome, there lived a humble and gentle man. His clothes were not as fine as the nobleman's, and his leather sandals were worn thin. He did not live in a grand house made of smooth marble, but in a small dwelling in a crowded part of the city. The man's friends and neighbors called him Valentine. Valentine was a physician and practiced his trade in a tiny second room of his home. In that room stood a cabinet full of bowls and jars that held herbs and powders. There were glass and different types of pots filled with animal fat and beeswax, and jars of wine, milk, and honey that Valentine mixed with his medicines so that they would not taste bitter. When the ill or injured came to see Valentine, he would show them into the tiny room and examine them carefully. He cleaned wounds with wine and vinegar and bandaged them with fresh cloth. Or he might grind up some herbs and roots in a small bowl to ease the visitor's pain. When it came time for the patient to pay, Valentine would only accept what could be afforded: a jar of wine, a basket of bread, or a new pair of sandals. If the patient had nothing, Valentine would say, it was but a few herbs and a prayer that has healed you, my friend, and he would send him on his way. Prayer was an important part of Valentine's life too. But where most people in the city prayed to the many Roman gods, Valentine and a small number of others prayed to a single god. The Romans did not like that these people, they were called Christians, who worshipped only one God. Whenever anything bad happened in the city, the Romans almost always blamed the Christians, even if they had nothing to do with it. Sometimes Christians were put in prison or killed. Knowing the danger of his beliefs, Valentine, who was a priest for the Christians, prayed for each of his patients, but only after nightfall. One afternoon, a man with a small child came to Valentine's door. The man worked as a jailer at the emperor's prison and had heard about the priest's healing powers. Valentine took the girl's hand and led her and her father into his examining room. The child seemed well, but when Valentine held up an oil lamp for a closer look, she realized why the father had come. "She has been blind since birth," said the jailer. "Can you give her sight?" Although he knew that blindness was one of the most difficult things to cure, Valentine vowed to do his best. From the cabinet, he took down a precious copper box filled with wax. The waxy paste, he took it and dabbed it on each of the corners of the child's eyes. The jailer thanked Valentine and tried to pay, but the priest refused. I cannot accept payment when it is doubtful the child will regain her sight. Bring her back next week and I will apply more ointment. The jailer and his daughter thanked the priest and were gone. That night, like every night, Valentine prayed for his patients, but he prayed longest for the jailer and his child. The father and daughter returned the following week, and again the week after. Each time Valentine applied a small amount of the waxy paste, but the child's eyes remained sightless. After so many visits, the three soon became good friends. Sometimes while the jailer stood guard at the prison, the priest took the child along with him while he gathered herbs and plants for his medicine. Together they walked outside the city gates, down the old stone roads until they reached the countryside. In spring the fields were covered with bright golden flowers, the first flower that would bloom in Rome after the winter. While Valentine gathered the white milk root for curing headaches, the child would gather bouquets of yellow and orange flowers to give to her father when the priest brought her home. Weeks went by until one day, Valentine, who was expecting a knock from the jailer and his daughter at the door, heard instead the heavy pounding of Roman soldiers. The soldiers burst in and began destroying everything in the physician's home. They slammed the pieces of all the cabinet filled with medicines. The precious copper box with the eye ointment was spilled on the ground. Before he knew what was happening, Valentine was led to the emperor's prison and put in a dark, cold cell. When the jailer heard of the priest's arrest, he hurried to the cell. There has been an uprising in the streets, and the Christians are being blamed, he told Valentine. Many have been in prison. The emperor has ordered it. There is nothing I can do. Valentine slowly nodded and asked for pen and ink and something to write on, which the jailer hurried and got. When he came back, the priest quickly wrote on the scrap of papyrus and handed it back to the jailer. Please give this to your child, he said, and grasped the man's hand in farewell. Later, 2 soldiers came to Valentine's cell and took the priest away as the jailer watched helplessly. When the jailer returned home that day, he was greeted by his daughter. He slid the scrap of papyrus out of his waistband, unrolled it, and handed it to the child. What does it say, father? Asked the child, as a yellow flower fell from the small scroll in her hand. From your Valentine, the father read. Slowly the child held up the blossom before her face, for the first time watching its colors dazzle like the rays of the afternoon sun. And the child was able to see. The end. So I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit more about St. Valentine as you maybe are writing your Valentines out. Have a wonderful day. Bye for now.